How to have a positive mindset, the smart secret to success. Step 1. Engage the intellect. Have a plan. To cultivate a positive mindset, we need to engage our intellect, and we need to engage our intellect by creating a plan for our life. A well-structured plan provides direction, purpose, and a sense of well-being in our lives. It gives the intellect, our mind, something to focus on, allowing us to concentrate on achievable steps and goals rather than being overwhelmed by emotional impulses and pushed around in life by every random event that happens. This approach enables long-term thinking and promotes diligence, both of which are foundational to success and again are rooted in the intellect. Without a plan to focus on, our intellect loses its power in our lives and it will struggle to find direction and purpose. It's a bit like exercising a muscle. You need to exercise every day to stop the muscle from deteriorating. If our intellect is not in charge of our life, then our emotions will take charge of our life. In the absence of a structured plan to focus on, our minds become susceptible to negative and damaging emotions, making it challenging to maintain a positive mindset. This will then lead to feelings of confusion, frustration, and negativity. By harnessing the power of our intellect through focusing on a plan, we unlock our potential for growth and success. Step 2. Recognize the enemy. Base emotional responses, or impulses, are the real enemy of a positive mindset because they literally shut down the prefrontal lobe when indulged. The shutdown of the prefrontal lobe makes it difficult for us to think clearly, make well-informed decisions, and maintain that emotional control. As a result, we experience negative emotions such as fear, anger, and anxiety, which can hinder our ability to maintain a positive mindset. This stops us making rational decisions, intellectual decisions. We start reacting to our environment rather than taking control of our choices as we navigate our environment. But where does this come from? Why do we act like this? As very small children, we communicate through emotional outbursts. We use these emotional outbursts as a way to communicate our needs to our parents. But as we mature, these emotional outbursts should be replaced by intellectual responses rooted in principle. We shift from an emotional approach to an intellectual approach as we mature into adults. The problem starts when there are areas in our life where we have these emotional responses and have not shifted to a mature intellectual process. We are still navigating these situations as if we were a child. This can be in our relationships, in our business, in managing our personal health. We can be underdeveloped in any area of our lives. This is why we can experience success in some areas of our lives and failure in others, as we have areas where we operate out of the intellect predominantly and other areas where we operate out of our emotions predominantly. Have you ever seen someone who is highly successful in business but cannot seem to have a good relationship with their dependent family members? Why is it that they can manage a complex business and make lots of money and yet at the same time have a completely failed or failing marriage? Intellectual management of our life leads to success, and following our emotional impulses leads to failure. This is observable. The more of our lives that is brought under the control of the intellect, the more successful we will be. We have to choose to govern ourselves with the intellect if we want to be successful. Step 3. Use SMART. So to help people engage their intellect and take control of their lives, we developed a simple system called SMART. This process is designed to give you a mental framework you can use to gain control of any area of your life where you are struggling. It involves 5 simple steps, which are separate, monitor, assess, replace, and trust. Let's have a look at those steps in order. Step 1. Separate. The most challenging step in learning how to think positive is learning to separate from our learned emotional responses that we have built up through our life. We can have negative, damaging emotional values that are stored up in our emotional history that will lead us into impulsive decisions and are the source of all the mistakes we make in life. But we trust them because we see ourselves as them, and this is rooted in our childhood experiences as they are fundamental to our survival whilst the intellect is still developing. So when we are confronted with a difficult situation, these learned emotional responses send us a message, typically a fight or flight message, that our mind then treats as authoritative, which we then act on. We see emotions as our identity because we're so used to granting them authority. We must understand that we are not our negative, damaging emotions. We just experience them And by grasping this simple concept, we are able to separate ourselves from them and take control of them. As an adult, our identity should be rooted in our intellect, our mind, our thoughts, our higher functions as an intellectual, intelligent being. By separating our identity from our negative, damaging emotions, we take the first step towards having a positive mindset. We start to take charge of our responses to the difficult situations we face on a daily basis. By choosing to identify as our intellect, we place our intellect in charge over the emotions, our mind over our feelings. We should experience emotions. Positive emotions like peace and joy and hope are good for us, but they must be subject to the intellect and under the supervision of the intellect, and the positive emotions you will find typically are. But the negative, damaging emotions or emotional responses reject that supervision and try to take over. And if we do not choose to put the intellect in charge of our emotions, then we will identify as our emotions, and this places the emotions in authority over our intellect, and this is when we get in trouble in life. So let's have a look at an example. So two people are in a room with a large chocolate cake. Both of them get an emotional message. Eat this cake, it looks delicious. Now the first person hears the message and instantly agrees that that is a good idea, and then is ready for the next message. When no one is around, you can eat as much of this cake as you want. And then that person starts to think of ways they can be alone with the cake and eat as much of the cake as they want to. Now the second person thinks that cake does look nice, but I need to be careful how much sugar I consume, and I have my fitness regime to follow, so I will pass. Now the first person identified with the impulse to eat the cake and embraced it and ran with it. The second person recognized the impulse but put the intellect in charge and took control of the eating of the cake. Which one of them do you think will find success with their health? Step 2. Monitor. Having separated ourselves from our emotions, we can now start observing them with our intellect. This step is called monitoring. Failing to observe our emotional state leads to errors in judgment and increased anxiety. Monitoring our emotional state also interrupts the communication between our emotions and our intellect, pausing the flow of information and preventing negative emotions from controlling us. We have now installed a safety valve between our emotional impulses and our actions, and this stops us doing things that are detrimental to us and others that are around us. This process has been named as many different things throughout human history, but a modern term used for this is emotional intelligence. This is a level of internal emotional awareness you have, your ability to recognize your emotional state and what it is demanding of you, your ability to monitor your emotional state. And intertwined in that is the ability to control your emotional state. Those that can do this and control the impulses have high levels of emotional intelligence, and this is the strongest indicator of success in life. The higher it is, the more successful you are likely to be. So here's an example. How aware of your feelings are you? How much control do you have over them in your life? Let's run a test. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Are you aware of what your emotions are saying to you? What feelings they are communicating to you first thing in the morning? Can you choose to act contrary to what they are saying? Can you get up on time even if you feel like sleeping another 10 minutes and being late for your daily routine? If you are not monitoring your emotions, you will not be able to get up on time. But if you are using your intellect, you will be able to get up on time. A key indicator of success in life is someone's ability to get out of bed and operate a routine. How are you doing with that? Step 3. Assess. The third step is assess. This is where we start to actually hold our emotions up to judgment. We start to be critical of our emotional impulses, and we start identifying emotional behavior patterns that need our attention. We need to identify if we are agreeing with our emotions. All our problems come about when we are agreeing with our emotions and treating them as the authority in any given situation. So here are some tests we can use to assess our emotional state. Some questions we can ask ourselves. Do we have trouble thinking clearly about the situation that is happening to us right now? Are our emotions so strong that we want to react in an impulsive manner? Are we running scenarios in our head over and over again for something that has either happened in the past or something that we are worried will happen? Are we experiencing a strong sense of fear or anger? Are we treating those around us as an enemy, as a threat, even the people we love? If we are experiencing any of these, this should set the alarm bells off in our head as they indicate our negative, damaging emotions are seeking control over us. So let's have a look at an example of this. You are driving along and someone cuts you up. How do you respond? Do you feel rage rise up inside of you? Do you feel the need to start hammering your horn and speeding up in an aggressive manner behind the other driver? Are you aware that taking these actions could end up in an even more dangerous situation? Are you aware that your emotions are starting to demand that you do something that could potentially be dangerous? Are you able to look at the emotional messages with your intellect and see them for what they are? The ability to assess our emotional state is fundamental to us controlling our emotional state. This does not come naturally, it has to be practiced. But when you learn how to do this, you will be amazed how much control you start to get in your life. If you can win that internal battle, you can win any battle in life. Step 4, replace. The fourth step is replace. To overcome the negative, damaging emotional impulses, we need an objective principle that our mind can combat the emotions with. Our intellect feeds on principle. It thrives on principle. It needs principle to operate with. This is why it's hard if you're struggling with an emotional impulse and you do not know what the principle is that should be used. When we focus on the principle that is relevant to our current situation, our current needs, the mind is placed in control and the emotions lose control. We use our will, which sits between the intellect and the emotions, to choose to operate with the intellect. We use our will all the time to make decisions, but now we become actively aware that we are using our will, and we use this tool to reject our emotional impulses and choose to engage our intellect and act on a stored principle. And this is a secret to a positive mindset. This is how we overcome anxieties and fears and develop a positive mindset and find success, by using the power of the will. This is true in entrepreneurship, in our jobs, in our relationships. Impulse control comes through choosing to act in an intellectual way that is rooted in an objective principle. Now, an important note. We also need long-term principles that our life plan is rooted in. Most people who are failing to live up to their own expectations do so because they don't have a clearly defined plan for their lives. Check out my video on building your dream life if you need help with that, as we show you how to create a powerful plan for your life that actually works. So I follow principles on a macro level as well as a micro level. I have principles for my 5-year plan and principles for my day-to-day emotional management, and this helps me achieve success in my life and business. But let's have a look at an example of replace. If someone interrupts us while we're working on something important, we will often feel irritation, and we can end up responding in a way that upsets the other person, and this can create lots of problems long term. So we need to replace that emotional impulse to be irritated with an intellectual principle. The principle we can use here is people are more important than tasks. Now we have engaged our intellect, we can calmly explain our situation to the person and ask them to wait until we have completed the task. We have avoided being rude and avoided a potential conflict by turning from the emotions with our will and instead focusing our intellect on an objective principle and choosing to act on that. By doing this, we have placed our intellect over our emotions, and this is what we have to do if we want to be successful in our relationships, in our life. Step 5, trust. And the fifth and final step is to trust. We need to trust in the principle we're using. We need to commit to it, because if we don't trust in the principle, it will all fall apart. We need to know we are operating on an objective principle, and we can do that once we understand that objective principles can be tested and observed. Acceptance of objective principle is foundational, and even those that say they don't believe in objective truth and objective principles are making an absolute knowledge claim. There is no objective truth is an objective truth claim. claim. So by sheer logic alone, the denial of the existence of objective truth is impossible. We assert the logical law of non-contradiction here to prove the point. So it is important to be able to identify an objective principle. As a Christian, I have access to objective principles, but I know that not everyone will be comfortable with that as a source of objective principle. So there is another method we can use to explore and test objective principles. The existence of objective principles can be observed because we can see there is cause and effect in existence. So a positive cause will produce a positive effect and a negative cause will produce a negative effect. The whole of science is predicated on this concept of cause and effect. This is essentially the scientific method. So now we can ask some questions. Is the principle observable and testable? Does this principle lead to success in my own life when I use it? Are lots of people adopting it and showing results when they use this principle? Can we repeat the principle and get the same positive results every time we use it? When we don't use it, when we ignore it, do we see negative results? There are other questions we can ask, but these will give us some good, solid tests we can use. So let's have a look at an example. It is a fundamental principle that debt is objectively bad. Why is that? Debt places the control of one person's life in the hands of another person. They can place restrictions on your life and remove freedoms from you because you've granted authority to someone else in those areas of your life. They own part of your income every month, and therefore they own part of your time every month. You also end up overpaying for everything you buy with credit, so everything costs you more. When you cannot pay your mortgage, the bank takes the house away, sells it to someone else, and then demands the money you still owe, and now all you own is a debt that you are required by law to service. This is objectively observable and testable. We see this happening to people all the time. People overpay for items, and they have to hand over their time and money to service the debt. So debt is objectively bad for the borrower as it enslaves them to the lender. So there you have the SMART process, a mechanism you can use to take control of your emotional and intellectual state and your emotional health and state. Now I recommend you practice the SMART process and start to apply it in your life at the micro level, moment by moment, day by day, and also at the macro level for your life plan. This is a process that has generated success for me in all the areas of my life where I apply it, and I encourage you to try it out and see what happens. If you have any questions at all about any of this, drop a comment and I will answer them for you. Please be aware that we do reserve copyright and reserve our intellectual property in terms of monetizing this process and using it in a commercial capacity. We do not grant any rights to anyone else to use the SMART process commercially for financial gain without express permission. Like and subscribe if you found this useful, and drop a comment and let me know what you would like to know more about. You can also check out our free marketing training course, which has over 40,000 students with a rating of 4.5 stars. And this course is designed to give new entrepreneurs a grasp of the fundamentals of online marketing and sales, and this comes with an exam and certification. We also run the Business Buddies community, where you can get help starting up your new business, and that comes with 58 hours of advanced premium entrepreneurial training. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to catching up with you in the next video.